What is up, y'all? Welcome in to the College Football Expert Show here at Bleacher Report. Paige Mendonca, Adam Kramer from the No Punts Allowed podcast. And Adam, it is National Championship Week, yet we somehow are talking more about the transfer portal, but rightly so. I need a vibe check from you overall in terms of Natty Week. We're about to leave for Miami, but portal is portaling.
Portal is portaling. Sport is chaos. We move the calendar around. We probably need to move it around a little bit more if we're being completely honest. I imagine what these teams that are getting ready for the championship are going through. A team like Miami, right,
Yeah.
which is trying to figure out who's going to play quarterback. So, if nothing else, it is tremendous content, right? And the sport has become a 12-month long content machine. But this is the formula page for being in the championship game. You look at a team like Miami, you look at a team like Indiana. Recruiting matters, your coach matters, but getting talent on your roster, building the championship contender literally starts here. And we're seeing a lot of teams do that. A lot of players, by the way, especially the quarterback, with all the money being tossed around, the rates going up for certain positions. It is absolutely fascinating to watch.
Absolutely. So we will get to a lot of the transfer news first, especially the biggest news of this week specifically. We'll talk Sam Levitt. We'll talk Dante Moore, Dylan Raiola, Ty Simpson, all of those guys at the top here. There is a lot going on. Obviously, the portal does close on Friday. To your point, what are we doing in the calendar? If you're prepping for a national championship, you're
Yeah.
like, why is this even a thing? But I will say, let's start with LSU, because Portal King himself, Lane Kiffin at LSU, Sam Levitt is going to be his guy. Obviously, they've loaded up in other positions around him. We knew Lane would be successful in the portal, but what do you make of Sam Levitt being the guy? And I also do want to give you credit because months ago on our podcast, before they even named a head coach at LSU, you did in fact say Sam Levitt to LSU.
It just felt right. It felt like a really good fit. His skill set, the way he can move the ball in multiple ways. I think it's an awesome pairing. It was getting a little hairy, by the way, right? Like LSU, we were kind of waiting to see. It was a game of musical chairs. I love the fit for both parties. Lane needed a quarterback in this transition year, but then not just him, right? Like they've the number one portal class right now, and
Yeah.
I suppose none of us should be surprised. Had a lot of bunch of players leave. This is a school that has very blatantly told you all the resources it has, that it was going to invest them in Lane. It's why he did this very awkward jump. And so, how will it all come together is the question. This is a program that is too good, too rich in possibilities to be as down as they've been. And there's no
Yeah.
more year zero either, Paige. That's the biggest thing. Year zero for a coach used to be, all right, we'll give you a little grace period. Like this is LSU, this is Lane Kiffin, that's done. They got to win big, and there's certainly a lot of talent coming in.
Well, and I also just want to point out that LSU did in fact have the number one transfer class coming into this season as well. So sometimes that doesn't always translate
True.
into having the best year. So I mean, Texas Tech would be an example of how it, works out in a positive manner. LSU, it's what you do with it. And Lane Kiffin obviously is the guy that they think. But the big story is Dante Moore, Oregon in general, because of course we found out that Dylan Raiola was transferring to Oregon, and then we were still wondering if Dante Moore was going to return. He will return, and so Raiola will sit behind him. What are your thoughts on this move for Dante Moore first, and then we'll talk Oregon specifically?
Yeah, he's 20 years old, right? And look, I'm a Jets fan, so there's some coping, this a little
Yes.
bit of therapy here for me. He looked at this to say, well, I could be paid what, probably $4 or $5 million by Oregon to come back. I can be better. I'll still be a young prospect, and I don't have to play for the Jets. And the team around him, they're building Oregon. You look at some of the other pieces that they've added of late, especially on the defensive side. The wide
Yeah.
receiver room is still going to be exceptional.
Yes.
It makes a lot of sense. And again, not having to play for the Jets, unfortunately for us. And so I'm a little surprised still, by the way. Are you surprised at all this? Because the whole thing we've heard with these quarterbacks staying or going, we did this with CJ Stroud, right? Well, Ohio State will make him a very competitive offer, and he left. It's getting to that second contract. Clearly, somebody he's getting good advice saying, improve yourself as a player, and the opportunity will be there. But Paige, next year's quarterback class could be a little bit more loaded for sure.
Better.
So it's fascinating
Yeah.
to see.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think that I'm surprised because we saw him transfer and sit behind someone else. So we know that he's being patient with his
True.
career. It's not something he wants to happen overnight. This doesn't surprise me because of that. Of course, the money aspect of it does impact this. Of course, we've seen now with NIL, things have changed with guys not necessarily leaving and needing, feeling the need or the pressure to leave. And I understand that. And what's funny is that Dylan Raiola is basically pulling a Dante Moore and sitting behind him and learning. And obviously being fully healthy is going to be really important. But I think one question I would have for you is if you are the NFL, is this something that's starting to benefit the NFL that like you're going to get more developed prospects and take the money aspect out of it and all of that, but like the production and the value that you're getting out of these guys and what you're seeing, are we going to get better quarterbacks in the NFL and get the like draft process right? Just because like I know you and I
Yeah.
are go back and forth a lot about the draft process and evaluating guys, and we've just seen so much pressure on especially those guys coming out to immediately fix an NFL franchise. Do we think that stuff like this is going to actually be the benefit of the NFL?
You would hope, right? You would look at like this NFL playoff weekend. You have a Bo Nix who has been up and down, but largely up, and led his team to 1 seed. You have a Caleb Williams who, bounced around but played enough, right? Jaden Daniels, of course, stayed and went to multiple schools, and Joe Burrow going back a little bit further. So, God, drafting a quarterback is the hardest thing to do in sports, I think, because so much of it is the environment. I'll go back to the Jets again. Bad. Sam Darnold, others, right? So, but yeah, I think the NFL is content because the business is doing just fine regardless. But I do think it's better for these quarterbacks. The fact that the money is what it is just changes the equation for everybody. And as college football, we're fans. We have a podcast. Like selfishly, this is great for us, right?
Yes.
Selfishly, you're seeing the best players in the country financially incentivized to stay a little bit longer. The question is for me, how can we do this in bowl season, right? How can we take
Yeah.
this to another level to make it even more compelling?
Yes. Also, another reason why I'm not totally surprised that this happened is the further you go into the playoff and the closer you get to a national championship, the tougher opponents you obviously play. You get exposed a little bit more. So sometimes making the college football playoff and going a little bit further maybe doesn't necessarily benefit you in terms of draft stock when it comes to things. But
Yes.
it obviously will improve his game playing there. And they were very successful this year, and I think will continue to be successful at Oregon. For Dylan Raiola, I'm curious your thoughts on just him sitting behind, and do you think he stays? I mean, the understanding is that he's going to stay and be the backup for now, but just your thoughts on that in this era, and also just what we know about Dylan Raiola and his time in Nebraska as well.
Yeah, I think a pause is good for him. It's been chaos. You had the Mahomes stuff. You had huge expectations. You had questions if he would stay at school last year. You have an injury. So
Yeah,
and Oregon has a track record for like turning projects, which he still is, into these huge success stories. So I think it's good to take a moment and breathe here. And who knows, right? He'll be the backup. You're one snap away. I think there's certainly levels to his game we haven't seen. I like it. I think it's the long play for him, which at this point, we talked about next year's draft class being loaded. Take a breath, get some stability because you really haven't had it, and then we'll see what happens. So for him, coming off a pretty significant injury, I think he's getting some good advice here.
absolutely. I do really quickly want to note Ty Simpson is leaving for the NFL. It has now been reported that Tennessee and Miami and Ole Miss were offering 4 million, and Miami up to $6.5 million
Yeah.
for him to transfer. Just the flip side of this for quarterbacks and going to the NFL. Probably an opportunity he saw, especially looking at the class behind him, is sort of how I would think. He also said I would be the guy that transferred, and I got the whole loyalty thing about Alabama and all that, which sure I believe a little, but I think the other part of it may be just the class that might be next year coming out, and this seemed like a really good opportunity for him.
I think it is. I think it certainly there were moments this season when he was in the Heisman consideration. I thought he played better than maybe his team drops and really weird plays. There were some other games like, the SEC championship where that's gonna be rough tape, right? In terms of scouts. He is not a complete prospect. But for someone like him someone like Trinidad Bliss, right? Who all of a sudden is trying to get back into college, but as a Jets
Again.
fan, I'm like,
Yeah.
please, sir.
Yeah.
But no, I think these guys are going to be kind of next up in a really odd year for the position, right? You're going to have 1-1 be Fernando Mendoza, most certainly. And then after that, where does where does he fit in? The other part of this too, Paige, is that offer of $6+ million. Um, my goodness, right? We've heard about this cap of this $20 million that teams have.
Yeah.
It certainly feels like
It's
we're
like
blowing well by that. Yeah.
yes. Yes. No, it feels like any cap in sports feels like it's just mythical and not real. And we're just being
Yes.
told that that's the case, but it really isn't. But let's move on to some landing spots for maybe some people we don't have answers of where they are going. And we will start with Damon Wilson, who is transferring from Missouri. He does have visits scheduled for LSU, Miami, and Texas Tech. The rumor is that Texas Tech is his last stop, but also just again, Miami being in this and being in the national championship right now, very funny. They are going to lose some guys on that side of the football to the NFL. So I have Miami slated as the landing spot. Your thoughts? I do want to talk about Georgia as well because I know that's where he started.
I like that spot. I like LSU as mine. And it really it's two opposite ends of the football spectrum right now, right? Miami, you could fit right in. They showed you the possibility. LSU,
Yeah.
you're banking on potential, right? This is join this movement that we're going to have. I don't think either will be a bad place. Really talented player, very productive, very disruptive. And even Texas Tech, like you mentioned, boy, there are worse options here. So somebody's going to get a really good player.
Yes, I would say Texas Tech also has the proof of hey, a defense in this conference
Absolutely.
making it. I mean, I think one thing, and we'll talk about some conference rankings a little bit later. One thing I will say about recruiting when you're in the Big 12 or the ACC, sometimes you can really push the idea that like, hey, the college football playoff is not that far off. Look, we've done it, we've been there, and it's a lot easier to do here than other places. I do want to mention that he did start his career at Georgia. There was like a lot of chatter online about maybe him going back there. I don't know if people remember, but when he did in fact transfer the first time, there was a discussion around maybe some legal stuff against some of the money that he was getting paid there,
Yes.
and leaving and having to pay that and all that. I don't necessarily think that that's an option, although a very hopeful thing and something maybe they could repair. So just something to keep in mind on that end when we are looking at landing spots. But another big name in the portal is Mandrell Desir out of Florida State. Where do you have him in terms of best fits?
Ohio State, right? This is a defense that the season ended with a thud, and it's been pretty quiet, I'd say, overall on the Ohio State front. A lot of it is more who's leaving, but new defensive coordinator brought in, extremely disruptive, and we saw them able a guy like Reese turn these really good prospects into really good players. So for me, that's the one that makes most sense, and I think you fit into that culture, and obviously a lot there. Young player, of course, really just kind of getting settled in. It seems like a really good
Yeah.
place to get settled into.
Yeah, the Ohio State, and that's also the place that I have him going, which is definitely the rumored spot, the landing spot as of now, as of right this moment. Because Kramer, if we've learned anything about this portal, we full disclosure, there were lots of people we were going to talk about in terms of landing spots. They all
Yeah.
announced their commitments because it happens. That's the nature of how quick this goes. And we
Or commitments and then decommitments and Penn's got to hit paper, right? That's the other
yeah,
takeaway in terms of the
I
portal.
mean,
Ask
yeah.
Alabama, ask a few others, right?
Ask Baylor. Ask Baylor. We're
Ask
not
Baylor. Penn's
DJ
got
Lagway.
to,
What are we
yeah,
doing? There's
yeah,
going to be some. I feel like Friday is going to be extremely weird. Like
yes.
we're going to be hearing okay pen to paper for like a completely different school because these offers we've also heard like even Sam Levitt, like we've just heard so much when like someone announces this is what they're doing, we've heard there's lots of stuff in the background going, hey, we can offer you a little bit more, or this is
It's
what we can offer you.
Yeah, it's signing day vibes, by the way. This is something we saw back when signing day was this big, robust thing. Your verbal commitment, it
Yes.
wasn't good until that fax machine was humming. So we have the spirit of that very much alive here with the portal.
Yeah, before we move out of Portal, I do just want to say that we we do need to move this in the calendar. Like it would
Yes.
be really fun to be doing this in like after the national championship. So like as much fun as this has been, I would really like to point out the calendar part and drive that part home before we move into something else because it's obnoxious to have to pay attention to both and feel like you're, especially if you're one of those coaching staff still coaching in for a national championship, this feels like a very odd time to be doing it. But
And
I
it's hard
digress.
too,
It will
right?
change.
Workouts are starting. You're establishing culture. Your strength coach is kind of the voice of your program right now. The next football season for many is well underway. I agree with you though. This is not sustainable. Like this is not
Yes.
viable.
Which it will change, by the way. Guys, there's
Yes.
lots of stuff that's going to go on in the off season. Like you mentioned at the beginning of the show, 12 months or a year. This is how it's going to go. Full
Yes.
year schedule of college football content. Now, let's talk about the two teams that are in the national championship game and start with Indiana because Indiana obviously could make history if they win this game. There's been a lot of talk and maybe hyperbole about this Indiana team. And you and I know this best because for those who don't know, we wrote on this over the weekend about this Indiana team and where they fit in terms of not just, okay, they're the best team this season. This has been crazy in terms of turnaround because it's specifically Indiana, not one of the traditional blue bloods in college football. How do we manage expectation and maybe not be prisoners of the moment, but how do we also appreciate how great of a team this is and the success that they're having this year?
Yeah, it's hard, right? And we're also running out of things to say about Indiana. So we have to go bigger and bigger. So the natural thing, the natural team that people gravitate towards now is Joe Burrow 2019
Yeah.
LSU, right? And I don't know if you're able to do that yet because we really can't do that, Paige, until you understand the gravity of these players at the next level. It was really
Yes.
cool. They were really good. And then you start to see Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson and Joe Burrow. You're like, oh my God, this was great. Same with 2001 Miami. I do go back and you look at the poll here is like this is a story that does transcend college football. It's sports story first. We're often trying to quantify greatness. That's hard to do. LSU, Miami, however you want to quantify it, in terms of just things we've never seen before, that's where I go to with Indiana. Trying to find a comparison. You and I talked about this during the game. Like what is an appropriate comparison that's not overstating what we're seeing? The doormat of college football, a team that's never found their way in doing this in 2 years. Um,
Hmm.
and with a roster that is great, but isn't composed of 4 and 5 stars like some of the others that we've seen. That's the to me, the hyperbole is there. Like I've never seen anything like this. And as much as we like the portal and all it can do, I don't think we'll ever see anything like this again in our lifetime.
Yeah. Well, and so much was said last year about Ohio State and the blueprint or formula or whatever word you want to use for it, and being like, you know what, this is what you have to do. And a perfect example is Penn State this year. They basically followed that exact formula, even taking a coordinator from Ohio State to try and do it, and it didn't work out that way. There is something special about this Indiana team in this era of college football because I will say, like, we are still going to get the big blue bloods in the national championship and becoming national champions doing things that they used to do. So like we've talked about like okay, is NIL going to change college football and can a program really turn it around who's not the traditional ones that are paying money? Because as we know, the blue bloods of the sport have that money and can still pay that and still can use the transfer portal to their ability and will get the better players and all those things. But to your point about this Indiana team and what it's made up of, it's something more than that. And I think that's where it's hard not to be like, wow, this is really special. And look, I don't think this is just a, hey, cool, this is going to happen this
No.
year. And then we won't continue to have Indiana be huge in this sport. And I think something that's really, really not mentioned enough in this conversation is the fact that Indiana kept Kurt Signetti at Indiana. Like this was a crazy
So
coaching
far,
carousel. Well, I mean, I even if he wins a national championship, I don't think he leaves.
no, I don't either. This is not, we were talking about this. Like, we often talk about blueprints or like this is your way to be successful. Like
Yes.
don't even try, like try to be good and use the portal and recruit and find a great coach. But to actually like even acknowledge like this is your way to be successful, you're not going to do this in 2 years. Look at
You can't be
Miami.
Kirk
Miami
Cincinnati.
has done a lot of really great things. It took them 4 years to get to this point, right? Building the
Yeah.
program upright. Cristobal done a great job. Indiana is doing something beyond imagination at this point. And so as we compare them to LSU and Miami, you can look at defenses, you look at Joe Burrow, you look at receivers, you look at Alabama's 2009, you look at all these elements of this. And I don't know, this is bigger than that. Right. Like
Yeah.
I'm all for having this conversation. And if they win, by the way, we're going to be having it. I'll probably be writing about it. But
Yeah.
I think this is its own separate category of
Gosh.
excellence. And the point I come back to is this the greatest college football team ever? I don't think so. Is this
No.
the greatest college football season ever? Yes, but
Yes.
not in the ways that we want to talk about, in completely
We are
different ways.
Yeah, we are fully in agreement there because looking at this 2019 resume, and also, by the way, I do want to say in the moment, so to your point about like, hey, we'll see how some of these players on Indiana, are at the next level. You were able to see very clearly that these LSU players were going to be elite at the next
Yes.
level. Like this was very apparent to everyone watching that year. And it was a very, very memorable year to watch that team all together. And like the names that you just look at it now and go, okay, yeah, it was obvious that they won the national championship. But I think to your point, this is probably not going to be replicated again because again, that roster in this day and age with inflation and NIL, man, you could hardly afford this. Like I know there's deep pockets, but this is a very
Yeah.
expensive roster in 2026. I'm not going to lie to you. It would be a lot to pay for this team. So you're not going to see this probably in the near future until that cap just keeps going up and up, the cap that we have,
Going
but
undefeated, though, I'll say it's a
yes,
really interesting point. Going undefeated in this era of college football, and we can rip on Indiana's non-conference schedule, get it. But you look at Oregon twice, Iowa, Ohio State. There's some heavy hitter programs on there, and I guess not just beating them. And Alabama, obviously. Sorry, I forgot that game. It was basically like they were playing Georgia State. No offense. Like they are throttling teams. So all of these things into consideration. I remember watching LSU throttle Oklahoma and thinking this is the greatest thing I've ever seen. Well, this is something different. And here's something different too. And if you want to talk about star power in terms of comparisons. By the way, Mr. Kurt Signetti had a little something to do with this one. If we're talking
this,
about
yeah.
Nick Saban's right hand man, I remember doing a long piece on this, and that was kind of the mystery recruiter in terms of Mark Ingram and Julio Jones. I look at some of these names, right? Like these are
I know.
historically great teams. Unbelievable.
There are so many good ones. And that's why I think the part that I also just want to mention is the logo. Like the teams that we're looking at, the greats of Alabama and LSU. Like this is Indiana we are talking about. This is not a college basketball show. This is college football. You're in the right sport and on the right channel. Like this is the craziest part of it all. And to do it in the amount of years you were mentioning, Miami, it took a little bit longer. Like it's crazy that it's happened this fast at that school and they've managed it this way. And it is very exciting.
2 years ago, this time, you say Indiana, and 2 years from now, Indiana is going to be almost a double-digit favorite in the national championship. It sounds absurd. It is. It
Yes.
was absurd. It still feels absurd, but they've earned it. And this again, look at these last two games. Unbelievable the way they've not just made a statement, just made the games not very fun in the
Yeah.
most dominant way possible.
Yes, which is the way you have to do it to earn the respect. We know how disrespected, quote, they were last year. But let's move on to national championship predictions. So, Kramer, we saw obviously these two teams get to the national championship, and there were certain moments that kind of got them there. And I do want to talk about that a little bit. And also, Miami fans, we will give you what you want to hear. Like, we will talk about Miami as well. I know we talked about Indiana quite a bit. I don't think it's an overreaction to say it's one of the best things we've seen in sports, but let's focus on the task at hand because Miami could change the whole narrative
Yeah.
on this. And I do want to start with this Miami team because, of course, this wasn't the team that outside of Miami fans, thought was going to make the national championship, even though they snuck into the playoff and were a team that was very much argued about, which is such a thing of the past, which is crazy to think that that was what a month ago, that we were having this
Yes.
conversation. It feels like it's been a lifetime, and now it's like, wow, this team is a team that needs to be taken seriously. And one of the things I do want to mention is that specific play that just occurred, Carson Beck's go-ahead touchdown in that game, because look, Carson Beck was not running for a ton of touchdowns, during this college football playoff. He isn't the guy that they've really been depending on. Sure, he's the quarterback of this team, but he's, for the most part, been able to be a game manager. And we knew for them to win this game, he was going to have to do something a little different. And I feel like that play was just a way of, for it to be, to go ahead, to get the lead, and to say, you know what, look, yes, there's a lot of pieces around me. Yes, we've heard about the offensive and defensive line quite a bit, but I'm still that guy, and I still came here for a reason. And I've been a big X factor of this, was a huge moment for them. And I think people are genuinely taking Miami seriously because it's like, hey, you know what, maybe something, the switch has flipped on Carson Beck, and he is ready to win a national championship and make it all worth it.
I love that play because it wasn't a perfect football game for him. There were some missed throws,
No.
and when he had to make a play, he did. It was a gritty performance, and that's a gritty play, right? Like that's a Carson Beck we're not used to seeing. So they have found a way, and he is a huge part of why they're there. Now, for our other team, who we've talked about a lot,
Yes.
Indiana, we have a Heisman winning quarterback. We have all-star wide receivers. The first play of the game is the obvious one, which is this. I'll take
Ooh.
that, and I'm gone. And so now, look, I know what people are probably thinking. Like, if this play didn't happen, Indiana would have won. And I get it, but I symbolically, you crush the soul of your opponent right there. And there's so many times this season that Indiana has found a way to do that. The fact that they did it there to a guy that we were projecting number one, number two in the draft,
Yeah.
right? Did that send Dante Moore back to school? Maybe, right? Like that play was so impactful and so meaningful and so sort of storyline-esque to what we've seen all year for Indiana. It was like you couldn't believe it. Like we're gonna do movies about this, and you're gonna put that in there, and you're gonna say, I this doesn't feel real. It was, and it to me, the game was over right then and there.
All right, Adam. So we are going to make some predictions on what we think is going to happen in this game. And I believe we're on the same side. I think. But I'm predicting that Indiana is going to win this football game by 10 points. I'm picking them to cover, even though that's a very unpopular thing, it seems, as of late. And I think a lot of people are taking Miami very seriously. Are you on the side of um, Indiana? And also, I have Fernando Mendoza, 200 pass yards, 4 passing touchdowns. I do think that this team is going to continue this momentum, and it's just going to be really hard to stop.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm taking Miami very seriously because there's very few teams up front that can hang with an Indiana. This is one of them. They've proven it all year long.
Yeah.
And in terms of my performance, Elijah Surratt. So I'm thinking 110 yards, 2 touchdowns. We just saw him have a 2 touchdown game when Indiana needs a play. And this is a game that I think they're going to have to find big plays. It's Miami secondary and defense that's a little bit banged up. This is the guy they go to, right? They have tons of option there. I've just been enamored with Surratt and Mendoza, that connection for the last 2 years. Um, Miami is going to hang here for a while. But ultimately, I think Indiana is too good. The little things, penalties, third down, right? Miami's got dudes. But when you look there, statistically speaking, Indiana's one of the best in the country. Miami in penalties, 85th. We saw the dropped interceptions. Miami's going to have to maximize every opportunity it can, and they can do it. I just think Indiana's too good in those spots to not win this football game.
All right. Well, we are going to put ourselves to the test versus a simulation
Oh,
of
yeah.
this national championship game. So we have a simulation of this game and how it might shake out on Monday, which, by the way, can we get national championships to be played on Saturdays? I
Yes.
just want to let's start there, but we I want to see how this goes. So we are in
Oh,
Miami. By the way, you and I will be in
so
Miami.
excited.
Look so excited. The weather looks to be good. All
Now,
right, Miami.
yeah,
Miami
we're
on the board first.
yeah, kicking a big part of the last game, right? And there you go.
Yes.
Running it up the middle here. This is so much fun, by the
Oh
way.
boy.
Yeah, I could do this all day and every week.
Oh
So
boy. Oh boy. The Indiana double.
yeah, and field goals
Okay,
are
aren't
not
gonna
going to
win.
do it. There's but
And
but but look. keeping it competitive within one score. It looked like a stop. Oh, and I guess we're just making all
Yeah,
of our field goals now. Is
we
that
are.
what's happening?
That is.
What is this, Ole
That's
Miss?
not something we've
Oh,
seen. Oh, a big giving up a big explosive play. You're not going to score on Indiana in the red zone, so Miami, this is actually what you're going to need to do is get a big explosive play. Do they
oh,
get it for? They went for two, and see that was exactly my point.
yeah.
That was exactly what I was talking about. Indiana. Wow. Okay,
Wow,
low
very
scoring game,
so under
close
under
game,
unders the
under,
play. Take the
and Miami
points.
covers.
Kurt Signetti holds up the trophy and then coaches the Steelers. That's
Yes.
that's what we're saying. No,
You think that he's
no,
leaving, and I
no,
just
no,
don't
no, no.
know.
I don't. They have to renegotiate the contract again because he's just winning too much, and it's in
He
his.
needs to be richer. Yeah, I
Yeah,
know.
yeah. That guy's no. I could see that kind of game playing out. I think there's going to be more points personally. I do think this is a game that will go over the total, but
Yeah.
we don't have that nervous energy that we used to have in some of the BCS type games where they were off for like 6 weeks, right? Like these
Yeah.
teams are playing, they're in check, injuries, momentum, all those different things are going to come up. But I think we're going to get more points in that personally.
Yes, I do too, but I do think Miami, if you're going to win this game, you're going to have to take shots because field
No,
goals are
no
not going
field
to cut
goals.
it.
Yeah.
Kramer and I do predictions, which by the way, we will do our full score prediction in the BR app, so look for that. But we were talking about the Oregon game, and I said I really don't think field goals are going to cut it. You're going to have to take your shots because Indiana's going to get there. So believe me.
Yes.
Um, all right, well, let's talk about some conferences. So, national championship, we have Indiana winning, but conference rankings. Now, we have an ACC team in the national championship, which I think most people would say, hey, that boosts the ranking of, that conference. Well, it's sure. But that doesn't actually move the needle enough for us. But Kramer, I do also want to talk about factors here when we're doing rankings. Okay. So these are
Go
mine
ahead.
currently. One, national championships definitely benefit you. So the Big Ten is on the brink of winning another national championship. The SEC, of course, it means more. The Big 12 and the ACC. Sorry, ACC, having Miami in this game does not move you in the right direction. But I think the big factor for me is not only is it, we talked a lot about transfers, okay, and transfer classes, and those sort of things being very impactful. Now, I will say, if you look at the transfers rankings right now, you've got LSU and Texas at the top of it, okay? And to me, of course, that's super important, but the SEC is now at a point where they're no longer top heavy and they're sort of beating up on each other. Not to say the Big Ten is fully top heavy. However, we've just seen there be more success given out across the board in terms of the Big Ten. SEC, it's just been the teams that we've been used to. We've seen some teams like a Vanderbilt become a lot better and be in these conversations and be teams we want to talk about. Ole Miss, another example of that. However, I think until you get someone to a national championship that's not Alabama or Georgia or LSU, like, then we can have the conversation conference wide. I'm not saying that they're not right there and these are 1 and 2 and it's very close. And then of course the Big 12 surging in the right direction for sure. ACC, figure it out. Figure it out, okay? Just figure it out. Outside of Miami, figure it out. You're lucky that they're staying with you, okay?
How fitting though if the ACC wins a natty this year? Like we've spent it was a
And
mess from start to almost finish, and then they find a way to hold up a trophy. I mean that it
and
would
then
be
it
yeah.
so basically it would be the SEC, it means more. In the ACC, it literally doesn't mean anything unless you have one really, really
Yeah.
good team that could beat everybody.
Yeah, until Duke happens or something of the sort. I,
Yeah.
I have the same thing. And so look, we do this every year with bowl records, and we can look at SEC, what, 4-10 in the bowls. I don't think that's fair now with the opt-outs and the rules the way
Yeah.
they are. I've actually never liked doing that anyways, because the bowl season with coaching changes and everything is just it's a mess. But I think, and you and I debated it all year in the podcast, like the Big Ten, certainly more top heavy. The depth of the SEC is impressive, awfully impressive. They've been out of the Natty, 3 years in a row, and that stuff happens. By the way, that's not going to be a constant. The SEC is too good. There are too many teams that are going to get cracks at this to continue forward. The one that for me that's kind of interesting is the Big 12. because I think you and I spent a good chunk of the year talking up Texas Tech. This team's for real. BYU, great season, and they got absolutely clobbered. Now, again, we're going to overreact to that. I think the Big 12
Yeah.
is a very fun football conference, but that didn't help our argument. I haven't forgotten about that. I know you haven't either. And then the ACC is, yeah, what it was sloppy. You had Virginia have a great year. You had teams like Miami who had some losses but found a way in. Kudos to Miami. Florida State, Clemson, like we
Yeah.
help, help.
Yeah, especially
That
those
would
two being the ones that were complaining about the money. But I will also say ACC wise, but when I say figure it out, I mean your tiebreakers and get your best
that.
team
Yeah.
in your auto bid
I think it
situation.
applies to more than that. Just saying, like
Yeah, I
tiebreakers
mean,
are bad.
hey,
Yeah.
no, because then you could actually have a consideration for an at large, a second at large, and be in there for two spots, not for one. And of course, we don't know what the college football playoff will look like next year. So that will also change January
Yes.
23rd. Cannot wait for that. Cannot wait to find out what we're looking at. It's going to expand, just so you're all aware. It will happen.
Yeah. If the Big Ten has its say too, it'll be like 100 teams, which more football. But I think we just let's go up a little bit, and then we can see how that goes, and then keep moving.
Yes. Well, next time we talk to you guys, we will have crowned a national champion, which is so crazy to think that it's already here. Transfer portal closes on Friday. We appreciate you guys hanging out with us and dealing with all the chaos during National Championship Week. For Paige and Adam, thank you so much for hanging out. We will talk to you guys next time.